Good evening, nation. Welcome to Shotgun Saturday Night. This is John, of course. Thank you for being here. We will be live again on Monday morning, God willing. So this is something I normally do not do on this channel, and that is a response to another creator here in the prepping community. I love many of the creators out there, but I figure we just kind of throw our own flavor out and we're done with it. People either love us or hate us. That's usually the way it goes. But this is a response to the Canadian prepper. Many of you are familiar with him. Let me tell you what I know about the Canadian prepper. We're not calling each other every night, every other night, and talking sports or anything. We've talked once in passing, and that was he had commented on one of my videos. We debated back and forth for a minute. I think it had something to do with Antifa, and that's the end of it. So we don't communicate back and forth. But I am a fan of his videos, and I do, I'm subscribed over there, and I watch a lot of his stuff. I can tell you he's one of the smartest guys in the room. He focuses on the baseline prepping, but he's an information prepper as well, which is huge. So I will link the video in question down below in case you haven't seen it. Most of you have, but in case you haven't seen the original video in question, he's saying 48 hours, something big is about to go down. And in this video, he is saying that the Red Cross contacted him. So for those that don't know, the Canadian prepper, he sells gear. It's nice gear, folks. I just can't afford it myself, but it is really nice gear. And he sells, survival food and MREs and things. That's his business. He does that for a living. So the Red Cross called him out of the blue, and they wanted to purchase all of his MREs. Name your price, basically. Here's a blank check. We need all of your MREs. And he found this very odd. He says this in the video. He found it very odd, and he specifically asks, again, he's in Canada. Does this have to do with the trucker protest, the Freedom Convoy? Is this for the truckers? And they said, no, it's not. We can't tell you what it's for, but we want to buy all of your MREs. This is very troubling. And let me just say, because he got this phone call, I'm basing this off of a primary source. He spoke to the Red Cross. I'm covering his video there. I look at it, therefore, as a primary source. So what does this mean exactly? When the Red Cross, a multi-million-dollar organization, reaches out, to a content creator who sells survival stuff, and wants to buy up all their MREs. Some very troubling stuff there, and we're going to get into that. I just want to extend on his video if that's okay. So what are we talking about exactly? If it's not the Freedom Convoy, if it's not related to that, and again, the Red Cross, multi-million-dollar organization, they should already have this stuff locked down. Not necessarily MREs, but food and things. Are we looking at mass arrests? I think he brought this up in his video. Detention centers, maybe. Could this be, does this have to do with the homeless epidemic? The Red Cross, again, they would not comment on this, but he goes on to say that speaking to them on the phone, their level of urgency was concerning. And that's a quote from him. This leads to a much larger issue, in my opinion. The fact that they are contacting people out of the blue. Now, I consider this to be a cold call. He wasn't expecting to speak to them. They call him out of the blue, okay? But it's not a cold call because at the same time, they know he sells this stuff. So it's not like he's trying to hide it. He makes his living selling the stuff. So he's pretty easy guy to find. But the fact that they are contacting people and the fact that the Red Cross, reached out to him lets me know that they know who has this stuff, who at the very least, who is selling this stuff. But there's a potential there for them to have a list of people that have made maybe significant purchases. Have you bought 6 months or a year's worth of survival food or MREs? We run into that question because it's very possible, based on this phone call, that they know you have the stuff, or that someone else does at least. This tells me something big is about to go down. The Red Cross, again, they're global. So this doesn't necessarily have to do with Canada. Just because they want to buy the MREs off of this man doesn't mean it's a Canada thing. This could have something to do with, the growing conflict in Ukraine, for example. This could have something to do with climate lockdowns that are coming, or a total, you know, militarized police state, either here or in Canada, wherever. We don't know. This is a global company in the Red Cross. This also tells me that there is a substantial food supply issue. So it's very strange because he had mentioned the homeless. If this was about the homeless, for me, MREs just don't make sense because they're the least cost effective. When I'm thinking about feeding the homeless, I'm thinking about, getting into food banks, cheaper canned goods, maybe the number 10 cans of survival food to a degree, but I'm thinking bottled water, I'm thinking canned food as cheaply as possible. This is normally how the Red Cross rolls. The fact that they were very specific on MREs tells me, again, I'm inclined to agree, something very big is on the horizon. What should you do as a prepper? How should you react? Well, you shouldn't just sit there at this point. This is, again, not trying to be gloom and doom, but the fact that he got this phone call and he's trying to warn people, that's huge. You had better have your food right now, and you had better have your house in order. Number one. I mean, there's just no excuse for it at this point. With the economy jacked up the way it is, the food supply the way it is, and then to have, he's a major creator here in the community. And for him to have that conversation on the phone with the Red Cross, and them to be so secretive and also very specific about what they want, and the fact they say money's no object, that's a huge red flag for me. Number two, you had better be paying with cash at this point. Avoid paper trails at all costs. I know many of you do that now. But what I'm saying here is, if you're going to buy 3 months or 6 months plus of survival food or MREs, and you run a risk if you're doing that at this point via Amazon, or you're doing it with a debit card or a credit card, because there's a paper trail there. And they're going to keep a list of everybody that has bought substantial amounts of food. Now, if you've bought a week's worth, they're probably not going to bat an eye at that. But when you get into a prolonged period of time, I just bought, let's say I bought a pallet of a year's worth of MREs. That's going to flag a few lists, and they're going to say, wait a minute, these people are pulling in a lot of food all of a sudden. Let's keep this name. So paper trails are a huge problem. Pay cash. Try and buy locally. Try and find places locally that sell this kind of stuff, and pay cash for it. Don't give them a home phone number. Don't give them a name, or give them a fake number or something. Don't give them anything except fiat currency and get out the door. Number three, again, there has to be a substantial food supply issue. I think it's much worse than we're being told. For the Red Cross to even begin to reach out to people, like the Canadian prepper, which I understand he has a huge business going on over there, but the fact that the Red Cross needs to reach out to people to try and pull in what they need tells me that they're running out of options. So I believe the food supply issue is much, much worse than we had thought it was maybe last week. Prior to me watching his video, I thought it was bad. coming away from that video, I'm like, it's really bad. And it just hasn't caught up yet. So I think you should, again, pay with cash, but be ready to disappear. Here's what I mean. Be ready to drop off the grid at a moment's notice. Be a very hard person to find. Okay. So, in other words, have what you need to the point where you're not going to starve, you and your family. Pay for it with cash so they don't know you have it, and be ready to disappear and become incredibly hard to find if things get really, really bad. If we go into a police state, for example, some sort of martial law, be it here, Canada, or otherwise, you want to have what you need and you want to be able to kind of just evaporate. Nobody knows where you're at. Nobody knows what you're doing. You're totally off grid. That doesn't mean you have to go out into the woods. That just means you have to be low key. You're not chiming into the internet or anything like that. Okay. MREs, them being specific about MREs, leads me to believe two things. Number one, whatever is coming is a long-term deal because, again, MREs, they're not thinking canned food. They're not thinking cost effectiveness. They're thinking totally, at this point, shelf life. And number two, um, it makes me believe it's conflict based. Okay. So again, getting back to the homeless, if it's somebody that's homeless, you're going to have time to prepare soup. You're going to have time to prepare uh, mass meals, if you will, soup kitchen style, to where people can come in. When you talk about MREs, you're being very, very specific. This is stuff that police officers, for example, law enforcement, or maybe the UN, if they're coming in, or maybe the military. This is stuff that they can eat. They can eat quickly. They get everything they need, and then it's on with the show. So I do think whatever's coming is going to be conflict based. Now, that can be war in the Ukraine, but it can also mean social unrest, social chaos in a country, be it Canada, the United States, anywhere, Australia, you name it. It feels like something is getting ready to pop off. I don't know how to explain it, and I'm trying not to be paranoid about it, but it just feels like everything is coming to a head. And then for him to post this video, it's almost like he's warning us without even, he knows he's given that warning, but it kind of underlines the fact that something is getting ready to pop off with me. And again, I'm trying not to feed into paranoia, but at the same time, I don't want to be caught unprepared for this. And I don't want anybody else to be caught unprepared. And to be honest, we have to consider this, and this is going down the rabbit hole a little bit. He did not speak on this. This is me shooting off the cuff. We have to consider this for a second. What if these organizations like the Red Cross, what if they're buying stuff up like this to kind of limit people's options? We keep talking about the reset, and I believe it'll come through the financial institution, but I also believe he who controls, or she who controls the food controls the people. Okay. What if this is about limiting options? What if this is kind of sort of another attack on the supply line? So I would make the parallel for a second over to firearms. They don't have to outright ban them if they're buying up all the ammunition, which agencies have been guilty of in the past. They buy up the ammunition, you can't find it, it becomes a paperweight, essentially. What if they're doing this and they're buying up all of the options? And again, I know that's down the rabbit hole, but I just wanted to mention that. I want to give you a list of things right now that you should be prepping. These are inexpensive preps. These are long-term preps. Okay. And I know it's basic stuff, folks, but I mention it for the people that are new to the party, the prepping party. Feel free to add whatever you want to this list. Okay. But beans, pasta, jerky, powdered milk, powdered eggs, rolled oats, peanut butter. You can go with almond butter and stuff like that too, but it's more expensive. White rice, canned foods, sugars and salts, honey, soy sauce, bouillon cubes, spices, protein bars, protein drinks and powder, and whole wheat flour. So most of that stuff is very, very inexpensive, and most of it is readily available in your stores right now. Who knows how much longer it's going to be there? Again, for the Red Cross to reach out and want to buy up MREs, a long-term solution that is quick and easy, makes me think that it's conflict based. This is my opinion. Consider the amount of water that you're going to need to cook. Okay, a lot of times we say beans and rice, and people stack beans and rice, but then they only stack enough water to drink to get them through. They don't consider how much water it takes for beans and rice for you to actually cook and get it to the point where it's edible. Okay, so you want to consider that. You want to over prep on water, and you want to have means to purify, several different means, not just, a life straw or something, soy or mini. That's great, but you want to have other means as well. You want to have the purification tablets on down the line. Prep for your pets. Now more than ever, that stuff is getting scarce anyway. Maybe consider, getting on Google and looking for alternative ways to make your own pet food, as opposed to relying on a can on a shelf, because you may not find that, especially if something does kick off. Have multiple ways of making fire. We all should have that at this point, and have a designated container or spot outside. So many of you are going to have a fire pit. If you don't have a store-bought fire pit, get some large rocks and make a small fire pit. It does not have to be huge. Or you have a grill, okay, something along those lines. But it can be something as simple as a number 10 can or a coffee can. If it comes down to it, if that's your only means of cooking, you can get away with it for a while. All right. And you just have to have the wood and means to make the fire. We have to consider this. Someone brought this up. Man, when was it? Thursday. They brought it up Thursday morning in chat. And forgive me, I don't remember who it was, but it's a really good question. We're seeing all of these shortages. I think Thursday we were making the parallel between the shortages we see now in the Great Depression. And they said the shortages that we're seeing now, is this rationing? And they're just going about it in a different way, rather than ration us and limit the amount of things we can buy hard to the point where we have, ration books. Are they just not sending enough out on purpose in order to ration? We have to consider it. I know that's down the rabbit hole a little bit, but it was an excellent question. I put nothing past these people. They want this reset. Also, you have to consider this, and I'm pretty sure the Canadian prepper has, but he didn't mention it that I heard. If they're asking you for your MREs, we need all of your MREs. Here's a blank check. What are the implications? Like, what are the repercussions if you say no? You cannot buy my MREs. We have to consider the fact that at some point, if conflict is coming, or a true full-blown SHTF war otherwise is coming, and they know it, wouldn't they try and confiscate it without buying it? Wouldn't we get to the point where if you've left a paper trail, your stuff may not be safe at some point if you just say, no, I'm not going to sell it to you. And they want it badly enough anyway. And this stuff is being spearheaded by governments or whatever, the cabal, not to drag you too far down the rabbit hole. Wouldn't they just come take your stuff? Or isn't that at least a possibility? That's a scary possibility. You've bought a year's worth of survival food online. Things get biblically bad in terms of food shortage, and there's this paper trail because you bought it online. At what point do they show up at your door and try and take your year's worth of food away from you because they know you have it? And it doesn't just have to be food. We could be talking about generators. We could be talking about certain tools and solar kits on down the line. Any prep that is significant may not be safe, but I'm thinking food first. Be able to move food and conceal it quickly. We need to talk about this probably this week, but this is why I'm huge on the survival food. You know, the survival food will have 10, 15, maybe 20 servings per container. It's small in the survival tabs. It's very easy to move and conceal. You know, try and move 20 days worth of canned food and bag beans and rice. Much harder to move around quickly, much tougher to hide. So consider that. Pick out a spot. Again, we'll go over it this week, but have a spot designated in your home where you think you can hide it and get away from it. I've seen everything all the way up to false bottoms on a bed frame. Somebody will they'll strip away the bed frame, they'll put food like survival food under the bed, and then they'll nail the frame back down. So yeah, we need to do an episode on that. And finally, don't kiss and tell. What prepping club, as we always say here, but seriously, don't kiss and tell. If you buy a year's worth of MREs, maybe don't spread that all over town. You know, zip those lips. If you just drop $2,000 on a killer generator, maybe keep that to yourself, between yourself and your family. A couple of trusted friends is okay if they're part of the group that is going to be with you when it hits the fan. But anyway, I'll be sure to, at Canadian Prepper, so he knows I did this response video. And of course, I'll link his video down below. It was an excellent video, and I appreciate it. Nate, brother, if you're catching this, I appreciate the warning. It probably does have something to do with Canada. But as somebody who is not in Canada, I have to also consider, man, this could be in relation to the United States. This could be in relation to Europe. So it is a red flag, I think, for all preppers. And I appreciate the information. You do a great job. Keep it coming, brother. Anyway, folks, Monday morning, we're going to be live. Until then, the inbox will be open. The email is directly down below in the video description. I appreciate everybody being here. Thank y'all. Love y'all. And God bless.